Now, this is the index action, the one we just looked at in the view and from the controller. But if we click the new, you see here we have a form for creating the new post with its title and its body. It's quite basic, to put it mildly right now. But all the actions are mapped out. This scaffold interface is not meant for shipping into production. It is meant to showing you how to build a Rails application with the basics, and then you make it look pretty, make it look nice.
Pretty nice, David. I got you.
Now, if we hop back into our editor here, I can add a little bit of styling to make this look slightly nicer than the very basic layout that you get with the scaffold by default. I like to use simple CSS, and if we save that and reload, you can see it just looks a little nicer. Now, Rails has a bunch of different ways you...
That's not nice and pretty. I think we can do better than that, David. 20 years in, and Rails is still king. With its conventions over configuration, its simple and reliable APIs, its wealth of third-party libraries, Rails remains a very viable choice for apps, big and small. It's my favorite, at least. Whenever I try anything else, there almost always comes a point where I think, I wish this was just Rails. Everything in Rails is just already done for you. Databases, tests, everything is included. In JavaScript land, you'll spend the first 4 days debating whether or not you want to use TypeScript. And then you spend 4 or 5 days debating which validations library to use. And then you spend 4 or 5 days regretting your choice of whether or not to use TypeScript. And all these choices make it seem like this is just too much for you to handle. Like you can't possibly go on alone and build a whole app. With Rails, you can. Like it truly can be the one-person framework. And I know because I have friends who run multiple large complex apps. I run multiple large complex apps, and that's going just fine. I guess. If not, that's not the fault of Rails, at least. Whenever you're in doubt, the answer is almost always just use Rails. Everything is top tier quality. It's simple, it's reliable, it's batteries included, until you get to the front end. And suddenly the answer is, I don't know, man. Whatever you like, you make it nice and pretty. Like, David. That feels like blowing a tire the second the race starts. Yes, that was a racing metaphor specifically for you. And it's not like Rails is holding you back. Like you can make it work with anything, whatever you want. You want to use Vue? You can do it. You want to use React? Like you can do it. Go halfway there with Inertia or all the way there with the Next.js app on the side. To me, that feels a little bit like having a steak with the banana. But each to their own. The point is that suddenly the answers are kind of vague, like, I don't know, you decide. And I just don't think that feels very Rails-like. Like there should be an option. That's the Rails-like option to build a front end. And we want the same niceties as they have in godforsaken React land. Like we don't want to reinvent the wheel all over again every time we build an app. Like that's their game. We do the conceptual compression thing, right? We pick something and then we use that again and again and again, and it's not like we're closing doors, but at least like we have an option. And that's why I decided to stop whining and instead go build. So let's jump back into David's project and let me show you what it is. Installing Nitro Kit is as easy as going to the website and running this fully automatic install command. There's manual as well, but fully automatic is fun. And let's restart the development server and see what we got. Oh, we still need to remove simple CSS. Right, so we lost some paddings and some margins, but let's see what we got instead. In most cases, when using Nitro Kit, you use the same APIs as you're used to. So for button 2, for example, we just put nk_ in front, and let's see what we get. It's a button. Nothing too fancy, but it is a button. And if you know Rails, you know that this isn't just rendering a button. This is actually rendering a form that's sending a sort of fake delete request. So will it even work if we click it? It did. But this form needs a little bit of love now. So that's at sessions new. And let's see what happens if we just put NK in front. Oh, we get a form with some nicer fields. And forms get a little bit of extra love. So there's a field, a generic field helper that you still need to tell it what kind of field this is. But for that, you get some automatic labels. You can also give it a description. And that gets in there nicely. But if one of the fields have errors, they'll get inlined as well. Just a little bit more convenience. Let's get signed in again. Now, back at the post list, we have this show this post action. Let's add the other two usual suspects. So we have a edit, and a delete this post. Of course, in Rails we can do it this way, or we can use the helper methods, but let's just do this. And then for this we need to send it a turbo method of delete. And let's see if they work. Okay, so nothing fancy yet. Let's try adding Nitro Kit to it. So that's a matter of putting NK underscore, and then we want it to be buttons. And let's see, same APIs, and we get buttons instead. Nitro Kit has this concept of variance, so some things can look slightly different. Buttons, for example, have a see if I can spell it, destructive button link to, and it'll be red instead. These buttons, however, would be nice if they were like squeezed together as a group. So let's add a NK button group here, and it's a block, of course. And let's see what that looks like. Okay, tightly together. Of course, now the CEO hits you up on Slack, pings you there? Can you make the post actions into a dropdown? CEOs, they just love dropdowns. Luckily, that's easy in Nitro Kit. So instead of a button group, we do an NK drop down, and then we need the instance, so we'll get the pipes and a D, of course. And now we call it d.item2. So keep the exact same API as before, just item2. And this one, of course, is a destructive item2. For a dropdown, we need something to trigger it as well. So we'll add a d.trigger. This has this trigger. This has the same API as a button. I should just say actions. And then, of course, we need to put the contents, so whatever goes into the dropdown, into a block as well. All right, let's see how that looks. Right, so we have our actions trigger, and there's a dropdown. Just plain simple, nice, easy to use dropdown. Would, however, be nice to have a slightly smaller actions button, and like even nicer if we had like a little icon on the side here, a chevron down to the Paradise City, like this. That's nice. My goal isn't to make the fanciest, prettiest, most aesthetic UI kit out there. My goal is just to give you an option to go with just using Nitro Kit, like you're just using Rails. So if you're thinking, but Miguel, my buttons need to be blue and like have a glow and fly in from everywhere, it could be easier to customize Nitro Kit. You don't have to wrestle with weird configs and abstract APIs and whatever. You just change it. So instead of relying on Nitro Kit as a plain dependency, Nitro Kit will generate the components for you inside your own project. So if you want the buttons to be blue, you just make them blue. Make it your own. Nitro Kit isn't fully 1.0 yet, like it isn't done, but it's done enough to start building with it. So that's my plan now. Start building things and make sure that everything's as simple and reliable as I hope it to be. And my hope is that you will too. You'll try it out. I'd love some feedback on it all, so we can make sure that this will feel as simple and reliable as Rails itself. Rails is now complete. Like I mentioned, all the base components are free, so you can just start using them today. However, let me show you one more thing. So back in David's project, of course, our app needs a layout. And in something that I'll call Nitro Kit Premium, we have already an application layout that's as easy to install as Nitro Kit itself, as soon as you have a license. Let's install it into David's project. Say yes to the address, and let's see what we got. So we have a nice, simple application layout that's, of course, responsive, has a sidebar when it gets narrow enough, and built-in dark mode. My plan is to make premium layouts like this one, but also like a bunch of ready-made, easy to copy-paste components. Think of like Tailwind UI that you can just drop into your app when you want to go extra super duper fast. You'll have priority support, and of course, you'll support my efforts in making Nitro Kit free as good as it can get as well. Like the ultimate success for Nitro Kit would be that someone trying out Rails for the first time doesn't get to building the UI and then get bummed out that they have to reinvent everything all over again and then leave. My hope is that this is actually giving Rails a proper front-end story, something that you can just use. I hope you like it. I hope you'll check it out. If you do, you can start it on GitHub. You can subscribe here if you want to. I'll be talking a bit more about it. Maybe sign up for the mailing list or even buying a early bird license. Anyway, that's Nitro Kit.